Coming up, is Phillip Fulmer the man to end Tennessee's turmoil? And who's going to win the SEC championship? We'll try to decide next on a special edition of AT&T SEC Country Live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hooters in downtown Atlanta, AT&T SEC Country Live. As we told you all week long, a very special Friday night broadcast from us as we get ready for the SEC Championship on Saturday. And, you know, Mike, you can really feel, much like just last year we were here in this same spot, the excitement building, both Auburn fans and Georgia fans. Clearly this is a day they've had circled for a long time. This is one they're certainly looking forward to.
Yeah, crazy it was a year ago that we were down here doing the show, Alabama and Florida facing off last year. How things have changed in the 1 year since we've been here. I think it's an incredible atmosphere. I mean, just walking, I took the MARTA down here. Yeah. Just walking around outside right now, you can see a ton of Georgia fans, a ton of Auburn fans starting to trickle in, and everybody's excited about the game.
So we'll talk a lot about Auburn, Georgia throughout our program tonight here on AT&T SEC Country Live. But even on a Friday night, let's begin the show the way we always do with our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. And let's go away from the game on the field tomorrow for a moment and talk about the news from Knoxville, Tennessee today, where it starts this morning. We find out the Tennessee Athletic Director John Currie is going to be removed from his post, and then very quickly we find out he's going to be replaced with a name that Vols fans know well, and I guess as of 2017 they seem to like. Maybe back in the early 2000s, maybe not so much, at least for a while. Mid-2000s, maybe not. But for now, they sort of view Phillip Fulmer as the savior. He's announced as athletic director today. Is this the right guy to lead Tennessee out of all this mess?
I think he is. And listen, there was a ton of reports coming out. You know, Phillip Fulmer meddled in John Currie's search, and you hear about Mike Leach this morning, possibly on his way to Knoxville, and then John Currie's meeting with Betsy Davenport, and that gets derailed, and he's fired. This is what Tennessee needs right now, though, in my opinion. I don't know what Phil Fulmer's role in was. All this, other stuff going on with the coaches. Tennessee fans need a name that they know right now. Do they not? They need one of their own. They need a guy that is a VFL, a Vol for life. That's what Phillip Fulmer is. He can bring this fan base together, kind of unite the voices. When you talk about some of the things that have been going on up there, they can point to Phillip Fulmer and be like, you know what, he's a voice for us right now. We know this guy. He's been around this program for 30 or 40 years. That's a guy they trust.
But here's the only thing I'll question about that, though. I mean, and if you'll remember last week, I told you this. When we heard reports that David Cutcliffe, the Duke coach, was turning down this job, that felt like the kind of thing that was a sting on Tennessee, a bruise on Tennessee. And I told you on the show that this would not happen, I believed, if John Currie and Phillip Fulmer were on the same page.
Yep.
That, to me, was evidence then that they were not on the same page, which just goes to show you, I guess, rampant speculation sometimes is the way to go here. But the one thing I'm going to caution Tennessee fans on, be careful assuming that Fulmer's going to be the guy here to make everything better when – not because he loves Tennessee so much, but because he wanted to be the athletic director so much. I mean, his motives may have been self-serving here. Because he wanted to be the athletic director so much, he was undermining and conniving behind the back of John Currie here. That does not sound like a selfless leader. That does not sound like, if you'll pardon a political word, like a statesman. That does not sound like a guy who's here to sort of put Tennessee before himself. This guy wanted a job, and he may have stabbed John Currie in the back to get one. Just because Currie's bad doesn't mean Fulmer is good and right. And in this case, I don't know that there is a good and right for Tennessee. And as much as I'd love to see, for the Vols fans who watch our show every day, I'd love to see sort of get out of this turmoil.
Yeah.
I actually don't know that Fulmer cleans this mess up as quickly as a lot of VFLs hope that he does.
I agree with you. And listen, I'm going to ask a ton of questions about Phillip Fulmer. You guys know how Alabama fans feel about Phillip Fulmer. I just think that when you look at them right now, they need somebody to unite this program. And Phillip Fulmer, for good or bad or better or worse, whatever he's been doing for the past week, whatever he's been, his involvement has been with John Currie, they need somebody to unite this fan base. And I think that's what they have in Phillip Fulmer, somebody that can be the face of this coaching staff. A lot of people didn't trust John Currie. They didn't understand why Butch Jones had a job for so long. They didn't know who really had the power in this program. Now that's a guy they can point to and say, he has the power. We trust him to do what's best. I can't see behind the scenes. I don't know what Phillip Fulmer did and what he didn't do. I do know now he's the AD and he's going to be there for a couple of years. And that's something that Tennessee fans can rally behind. That's what they need right now.
Craig and Amber Ramey in the comment section says that T. Martin's going to be on his way to Knoxville soon. I think the assumption there is because former coach Martin, because Martin was at one point believed to be a candidate, that maybe he's the guy that Fulmer will target here. Do you have a sense in what you think that Fulmer's going to do? He did suggest today that candidates that were previously kind of closed off to Tennessee maybe opened up because he's the new athletic director. Obviously, that's the kind of thing he's going to say on the day that he gets the job. Do you get an indication of the direction that he might try to go? Do you think a guy like T. Martin is more involved now?
I think T. Martin would be a fine hire. I got to be honest with you. When I woke up this morning and I saw the reports about Mike Leach possibly heading to Knoxville, I got excited for the Knoxville fan base. I got excited for Vols fans because I think that would have been a good hire for them. You can question what Mike Leach's offense is. You can question how well it would work in the SEC. I think for right now and all the problems they've had hiring a head coach, I think that would have been a good hire. Then all of a sudden John Curry's fired, and then all of a sudden comes up and he was acting rogue. Maybe a Jimmy Haslam was with him. Now Phillip Fulmer is the AD. I don't know where you start. I guess T. Martin might be a good starting point, but to me, if they're saying they're opening up the pool of candidates, they're looking somewhere else, in my opinion.
Yeah, Philip Harris in the comment section, by the way, he also brings that point up, or at least what you mentioned with Jimmy Haslam, that maybe Haslam, the Browns owner, the big booster to Knoxville, maybe the removal of Curry, who was essentially in Jimmy Haslam's back pocket, maybe and putting in Phillip Fulmer, who's a strong name, strong voice, maybe this reduces the power that Haslam had over this organization maybe a little bit?
I think that's what they were looking for. I think that's the route that Betsy Davenport was trying to take when she removes John Curry. I think she removes Jimmy Haslam a little bit. Phillip Fulmer, like I said, can take over, and for better or for worse, in the back of the booster's pocket or not, he's the guy who can be the face of this. He can kind of be a voice for Vols fans, and I think Vols fans, for the most part, the ones at least that I've seen on Twitter and social media, are very happy about the hire.
Special live broadcast from Hooters downtown Atlanta on AT&T SEC Country Live tonight. Let's move on to our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. Item number 2 on our list. Boy, you're talking about more big news today. On almost any given day, this would be earth-shattering SEC news as Texas A&M, a program that maybe before this weekend was not thought to be in the upper tier of the SEC. But they made an upper-tier move in going to Tallahassee, Florida. Whether he was disgruntled or not is sort of beside the point. But Texas A&M goes to Tallahassee and pulls out Jimbo Fisher, doing what LSU tried and failed to do just a year ago here. I think this is a big, bold move for Texas A&M. And I think if you're an Aggies fan, of course we have a lot of Aggies fans that watch us every day here, and including our night broadcast here tonight on AT&T SEC Country Live. I think this is nothing but celebration. I think Texas A&M sort of, boy, it's got a little bass in its voice right now when it talks, because this was a big move, I thought.
And they should. It's one of the more shocking coaching moves I think we've seen in some time. We talk about 10 years, $75 million. That's what it takes to pry a national championship caliber coach away from possibly a top 10 program at FSU and bring him to Texas A&M. But how many times have we said it? This is a little bit of a sleeping giant. I feel like, Texas A&M is in fertile recruiting ground. They have the money to make something like this happen. Now all of a sudden they have the coach. What's the limit? What's the ceiling for this program right now? I don't know if there is one. I think that Jimbo Fisher gets in there. He starts to mold this program into the image that he wants it to be, and I think that Texas A&M starts to play a lot tougher starting next year. I don't know how successful they are in year one, but I guarantee you everybody else in the SEC West are on notice.
Jonathan Allen in the comment section says Jimbo Fisher's so overrated. I honestly don't know where that comes from. Yes, Florida State's fallen in hard times this year, but there's been some attrition with quarterbacks. Now you can make whatever punchline you want on this, but Fisher lost some guys off that roster for some behavioral reasons. DeAndre Francois gets hurt. Let's not act like Florida State's going to be not bowl eligible if DeAndre Francois does not get injured. This was a guy who had big numbers a year ago. Jimbo Fisher hasn't forgotten how to coach over the course of just one season.
Well, and I look at it the opposite of almost, all year I question what Gus Malzahn was. Is he a coach that when he has the players can get this team over the hump? That question's already been answered for Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher can get to the national title game if he has the players. Now the question is, can he get the players and sustain the talent at Texas A&M? But you've already taken something out of the equation. You know what I mean? There's not all these things. Hey, is it the coaches? Hey, is it the players? Hey, is it the recruiting? Or is it is it the boosters? That coach can get to that level, and there's something to be said for that. And he can walk into those recruits' house and say, you know what? I haven't done it at Texas A&M yet, but I'm going to, and I have the ring to prove it.
Alan Frazier in the comment section says the guy that Jimbo Fisher's replacing, Kevin Sumlin, he may end up switching place with the Jimbo Fisher. We talked about that report a little bit on yesterday's episode of AT&T SEC Country Live. Whoever gets that Florida State gig, woohoo, all that talent. The next coach will be getting a monster with Cam Akers and company. And Akers is a great running back out of Clinton, Mississippi, a guy who I think lived up to a lot of the hype in his freshman season there at Florida State. And if it's a Sumlin, if it's a Willie Taggart, who I think is an interesting name out of Oregon, who knows Florida well from being at South Florida. Florida State's obviously not an SEC school, but when it comes to recruiting, Florida State's one of the biggest rivals to SEC schools when it comes to recruiting. So wherever Florida State goes, it will have some implications for SEC fans, because that's a guy who's going to be trying, much like J.J. Peterson, much like Robert Cooper, a lot of these names for 2018. That's a program that's going to be trying to steal some of those SEC priorities.
Now, listen, when I look at Taggart and Sumlin and put them side by side, I think they're very similar. Very similar in the offenses they're going to run, very similar in what they need as a coaching staff. The only difference in my mind is that Taggart didn't just get fired from a job, and maybe that makes him look a little bit more attractive. He's still kind of rebuilding that program out at Oregon right now, but he's already made them a lot different than they were last year. So I think either one of those guys becomes a home run hire. I like Kevin Sumlin and the fit he'd have at Florida State. Well, Sumlin's problem the entire time at Texas A&M was never really scoring points. It was about defending the football. Yeah. That's why they bring in John Chavis and pay him $1 million a year. Think of the speed that Kevin Sumlin would have at Florida State on that team. Defense all of a sudden becomes not as big of a mountain to climb if you're Kevin Sumlin.
Yeah, and Cliff Nelson in the comment section sort of takes the opposite approach of for Jimbo at Texas A&M, and Cliff obviously cares about this because he's a big LSU fan. For Jimbo, that defensive coordinator hire is going to be key here because while I'm not an expert on all the twists and turns of the Florida State program, I know that Seminole fan dissatisfaction with Charles Kelly, their defensive coordinator, is one of the reasons why a lot of Florida State fans may not be that sad about to see Jimbo go. They may have shown a little too much loyalty to a defensive coordinator that probably just was not working out.
Yeah, I agree, and it is going to be a big hire. And Jimbo Fisher, I guarantee, while he's on that plane headed to College Station, is already asking those boosters, hey, how deep is your pockets? How deep are we talking here? Jeremy Pruitt's a name that's going to come out a lot when you talk about a guy that's already worked with Jimbo before. He's at Alabama. He's a great defensive coordinator. You're going to see some of these other names start to pop up, and I guarantee you Jimbo Fisher is going to throw a ton of money at whoever he wants on that defensive side of the ball.
All right, item number 3. We're live at Hooters downtown Atlanta for a very special broadcast of AT&T SEC Country Live tonight. It is the SEC Championship. We're just down the road from the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which will host its first SEC Championship game tomorrow. And obviously the big storyline in this game continues to be the unknown of the Auburn running back, Kerryon Johnson. I think the consensus I've gotten from everybody that I've talked to this week, and I may have even said this in our program yesterday, almost everyone thinks that he will play. Almost no one thinks that he'll be 100%. Is that kind of where you are on this as well? I mean, Malzahn, just in the last 12 hours, has kind of talked about the idea of this being a day-to-day thing here and really not giving up much, either because he doesn't know or doesn't want to say. I mean, what do you think about Kerryon Johnson tomorrow as a guy that both played hurt and saw guys play hurt over the course of your football career?
Yeah, well, all I know is that Kerryon Johnson, once he suits up and he walks in Mercedes-Benz Stadium today and he gets that uniform pumping in the crowd, all of a sudden he's going to play. I don't know if he's at 80%, at 90%, at 70%. I think he's going to play. I think the question you have to ask yourself, especially if you're a Georgia defender right now, look at Kerryon Johnson. Is he going to run the Wildcat? Is he going to be in and get 30 carries, 33 carries, whatever it is that he's used to getting? He has been the feature back. Can he do that? Or do they kick it down to 20 carries and maybe put somebody else in the Wildcat position? I think that's the biggest question going to the game. Whether he'll play or not, it's not a question to me. I think Kerryon Johnson will be on the field. He'll do whatever he has to do to that shoulder to get it ready for competition. But is he the same guy? Or can they use him in all the same situations? Do they want to use him on goal line, short yardage when he gets those bruising yards? I'm not sure if I know the answer to that just
Jeffrey
yet.
Payne in the comment section says Auburn doesn't need Kerryon Johnson to win, and to a certain extent, and you can see the shirt that I'm wearing right now, I'm obviously coming this from the Georgia perspective, but there's a part of me that is concerned about Auburn still being a very potent offense, even if Kerryon Johnson doesn't play. You know how I feel about Jarrett Stidham. I think he's a really dangerous quarterback. And there's a part of me that wonders if the absence or at least the limited nature potentially of Kerryon Johnson, if that doesn't sort of throw a monkey wrench into Georgia's defensive game planning for Auburn, because all of a sudden it's a totally different team. Maybe Auburn throws more tomorrow than they have at any point in time this season. And I think that Jarrett Stidham is the kind of quarterback that can be good even without Kerryon Johnson, and maybe the element of surprise even helps Auburn a little bit there. So as a Georgia fan, which I am, I don't take complete comfort in the idea that Johnson either might not play or probably won't be at 100%, because I still look at the Auburn weapons apart from that and still see a team that's really capable of scoring some points tomorrow.
And you should. But I think what's really interesting in this, if you're looking at it from an Auburn perspective, if you're looking at a guy like Cam Martin or another one of those backup running backs get in the game, you have to look over and think that Mel Tucker and Kirby Smart are going to be monitoring who's in that position on third down. Who's going to be the blocking running back? I think it becomes a big deal, because we've talked about it before. Kirby Smart hasn't been one of those defensive guys that has blitzed a ton this year. I mean, he's rushed for in a lot of different instances. I think they have to blitz tomorrow if they're going to be successful on some of these third downs and stop Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah.
Who's going to be that blocker in the backfield next to him? I think answers a lot of questions for Kirby Smart.
That's Mike Johnson. I'm Brandon Adams. This is a very special broadcast of AT&T SEC Country Live. Of course, AT&T, a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless, DirecTV. They'll help you stay connected all season long. And don't forget, we are here live at the Hooters downtown Atlanta. If you're watching us from one of your your hotel rooms near Peachtree Street, get on over here and see us. We're up here on the second floor of the great Hooters location downtown Atlanta on Peachtree Street. We'd love to see you. And if you're getting ready to watch the SEC Championship game tomorrow, looking for a great way to enjoy some food, maybe entertain some friends, how about this great offer from Hooters? Right now you can get $5 off your order of $25 or more when you use the promo code SEC Fans. Use that promo code SEC Fans. Get $5 off your order of $25 or more, but it's got to be online and it's got to be to go. Check that out at Hooters.com. Of course, it's great to have you with us here on AT&T's SEC Country Line tonight. Let me move on here now to item number 4 on our AT&T SEC Country Line First and 10 list. Another story that would be huge on most days was Ole Miss being notified by the Committee on Infractions about its penalties here. It is 3 years worth of probation, a postseason ban for 2017, which was self-imposed, 2018, which Ole Miss is apparently going to appeal, vacated wins, which nobody cares about, scholarship reductions, which were already self-imposed by Ole Miss as well. Your take on what happened to Ole Miss today?
Well, I think they definitely have to be concerned about the bowl ban for next year, obviously trying to appeal that because all of a sudden it becomes open season for these seniors to leave and transfer to other programs. If they don't have a goal of getting to the postseason next year, I have to believe that some of these seniors are going to step aside and say, you know what, I might have a better opportunity and better showcase my talents at another program. But you already saw that A.J. Brown says he's staying. A couple other guys say they're staying so far. So I don't think that becomes a huge story. I think the biggest story I take away from today is that Ole Miss can start moving on. I think really that's the biggest thing for me. You wonder about the bowl ban. Obviously, the scholarship restrictions are going to be huge in the years to come, but they've hit bottom. And Ole Miss right now as a fan base and as a program has Matt Luke in place, a guy who loves that program. He's not going to leave and go somewhere else. They can start building back towards something. They can start climbing the stairs again to start getting back to relevance in the SEC West. And I think that's, as an Ole Miss fan, that's what you have to take away from today. Hey, you know what? We hit rock bottom, but now begins a new era in our football team.
2 quick points from me. I think the big takeaway from this is, or actually, let me make 3 quick points. The big takeaway from me on this is a lot of folks will be paying attention to what happens to Shea Patterson here because Patterson, as he heals up, he's a potential kingmaker in college football next year. It's probably a one-and-done situation for him. I believe he tries the NFL in 2019, but if Patterson, if he chooses to transfer, that becomes a huge story in college football.
Yeah, if he chooses to transfer, it is a big deal. I think right now the seniors are the only guys that can leave right now without having to sit out a year, so I don't know that Shea Patterson will be on that bubble. I think you are looking at a guy like Jordan Ta'amu, who was the junior college transfer that finished at the quarterback position for them. Maybe he does look elsewhere and say, you know what, if you guys are going to go with Shea Patterson, I might go to another program and try my luck. I just have to think that today, for everything you got hit with, Ole Miss fans have to be glad it's over. You can start looking at what players are going to be around next year, maybe get this bowl ban taken off, due to the fact that you had one this year and they're trying to give you one next year. But it's like I said, I think today's a win for Ole Miss fans just because you can start moving in the right direction.
I think I'd be scared to death, though, with Matt Luke, who seemingly, based on a lot of reports, only got the job because he beat Mississippi State in the last game of the season. Is that really the guy to navigate you through these waters? It's almost a similar question what we asked about Tennessee, about Ole Miss. Is a guy that you weren't sure you trusted before the Egg Bowl, all of a sudden now he's going to clean up this mess? That seems like a pretty risky bet.
Well, going into the year, you got to look at what this guy did. I mean, this is a team that had nothing to play for and has an injury to their starting quarterback, and somehow Matt Luke is able to rally the troops and keep their head on and not have anything crazy happen during the season and gets it pointed in the right direction. Not only that, but he's homegrown, he loves Ole Miss, and he's from Mississippi and played at Ole Miss. I think he'll be fine. I don't know if he's a national championship caliber coach. When you talk about bowl ban and scholarship restrictions, it's hard to get. It would be hard to get another coach to stay there during some of those restrictions right now. I think you don't have to worry about that with Matt Luke. You can go into recruits and say, hey, here's what's going on right now, but this is the guy leading us. And you know what? A couple of years out of Matt Luke, I think they'll be happy with him.
And so the other thing for me here is they kind of went a little light on Hugh Freeze, all things considered. He will have a small suspension he has to serve, but I believe Hugh Freeze is going to be coaching again. So I don't know if it's a head coach, but as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller, something he's really good at. I think this today, you call it a win for Ole Miss. In a weird way, it's almost kind of a win for Hugh Freeze as well, because I think that he's free to be hired again very soon.
Yeah, and listen, I'm on board with Hugh Freeze getting another job as a coordinator. I think it's going to be hard to get a head coaching job, but here's a guy who was humiliated, a nationwide humiliation, a very public scandal with everything that's gone on with him. If he pays his due time, you know what? I'm fine with him getting a coordinator job somewhere else.
Let me move on to item number 5 on our list. Same story, but from the other side, it's the Mississippi State side. Old coach Dan Mullen, who does get mentioned in the Stephen Godfrey reported SB Nation about what went on here with the Ole Miss side. Obviously, Leo Lewis was one of the key witnesses here that kind of brought down Ole Miss and all of this. And I want to read you a series of quotes. One from what Godfrey reported about Mullen. Mullen's response back to him, and then a third party here, an Ole Miss player who apparently was told something by Leo Lewis. First of all, let me start with Stephen Godfrey. Here's what he wrote, SBNation.com. According to multiple sources and documents obtained by SB Nation, Leo Lewis told the COI, that's Committee on Infractions, that he was informed by former Mississippi State head coach Dan Mullen in April 2016 that he would be interviewed by NCAA enforcement. That's not a typical protocol here. Mullen responds back to say NCAA found no major violation. This is an official statement from him for Mississippi State to release in the Ole Miss case. I'm also not familiar with what the NCAA testimony in this case is because I didn't speak to Leo Lewis, but his testimony either beforehand or afterwards. However, Stephen Godfrey does have a quote from Ole Miss defensive back Armani Linton that sort of challenges that, saying that he was told by Leo Lewis that Mullen was preparing him for kind of how to avoid trouble in that regard. This is sort of a complicated deal, really on all sides, the Ole Miss, Mississippi State side, maybe specifically involving Mullen here. Is this a problem for Mullen based on how you understand it?
I actually don't think it is. I think when you look at what Mullen's dealing with right now, he's off at Florida. To me, there's so many angles on this story, and there's so many stories being told from mothers and fathers and boosters and 2 different universities and 2 different head coaches and guys that have been fired and new guys that are on campus. To me, in my opinion, I know that Mississippi State and Ole Miss fans are probably a little bit deeper into the story maybe than I am, but I think it's going to be hard to pin Dan Mullen with anything. I think when you look at the stories, you're going to have one guy saying this, you're going to have another guy saying this. Dan Mullen is now out of the picture, and to me right now, that's going to be the least of a lot of people's worries. He's kind of out of focus, as it seems.
Here's what I will say. If I'm an Ole Miss fan today, I'm furious.
Yeah.
And part of my fury here does kind of involve Mullen a little bit, just the situation there at Mississippi State. Because, I mean, imagine if this was Alabama or Auburn or LSU or Georgia or Florida, one of the, and I don't mean to say it this way, but it's just true, one of the bigger fan base in the SEC. Imagine the outrage if you got a situation where there is evidence that Leo Lewis received money from a person connected to Mississippi State, received money from someone connected to Ole Miss, chose Mississippi State, and yet somehow that's proof of lack of institutional control against Ole Miss. How does that make any sense whatsoever?
Yeah.
Something about this whole deal here is fishy.
Yeah, I agree. And then in the process, all of a sudden your head coach's phone records come out, and he gets canned along the way. And it has been a cluster. And the NCAA, to me, is just another kind of strike against them. They really have had a bad look for the last few years. When you look at how they dealt with North Carolina, when you look at how they dealt with Miami, now how they've been dealing with Ole Miss in this situation, there's no set of boundaries. There's nothing to really keep the NCAA in check in some of these situations where they just throw out these punishments, see if anybody kind of appeals, and then they go from there. To me, they're going to have to answer some of those questions somehow.
Real quickly here off the subject, Marshall M.J. Jones asked you, are you rooting for Ohio State tomorrow? As an Alabama alumnus, are you bringing yourself to root for Urban Meyer and the Buckeyes?
Yeah, it's going to be tough, but I'm going to have to. I think that's the only way. I think that when you look at TCU, when you look at Ohio State, one, if not both those teams have to be successful for Bama to continue on. So a lot of pride being swallowed in Tuscaloosa in the state of Alabama.
We're live here at the Hooters downtown Atlanta, right here on Peachtree Street for a very special broadcast of AT&T SEC Country Live. Let me move on to item number 6 on our list. And I was actually surprised at something you said a moment ago. You're talking about Mike Leach. So you think Mike Leach, the Washington State coach, the sort of mercurial pirate, sort of strange personality, you think he's a good fit for Tennessee? You think he's a good fit for the SEC?
I think he is. Somebody was putting a picture up today of a pirate ship out in the river outside of Neyland Stadium, and I thought that was perfect. Listen, to me, when I woke up and saw all those rumors, and they were breaking late last night, everything was going on Twitter, I thought, man, perfect fit. If anybody's willing to take that jump to Tennessee right now and wrangle in that fan base and make everybody friendly again, it's Mike Leach. I know he's quirky, but he's a proven winner. I don't know if SEC style fits, but he's a guy that can go to places and do things offensively that Butch Jones never dreamed of. Offenses that Tennessee hasn't seen in years, and I think the Tennessee fans would rally behind him.
Here's another example of me just sort of throwing some wild speculation against the wall, and maybe it stuck. I was doing Dog Nation Daily this morning, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, when the Curry news broke, and I said out loud, and I just sort of speculated in the open air here that it wouldn't surprise me if the contact of Mike Leach may have been what got him fired because of Leach's background. Come to find out, there were a lot of reports that suggested that was true, even though no one at Tennessee is necessarily going to confirm that part of it. This is a guy that, allegedly locked somebody in a closet, one of his players. What may be a bigger problem for Tennessee, though, is he sued Texas Tech.
Yeah, that's an issue.
Listen, hiring somebody that sued his previous employer is just a really tricky thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a reason why you see Leach, even though he's done a good job at Wazoo, on like the 8th or 9th choice for a lot of these schools, because this is a guy that comes with some baggage. I think he's too weird for the SEC. I've told that a million times.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm an AD, the baggage does concern me. You need a clean hire here, and that's not an easy vetting process.
Well, it's tough for me, too, because I followed that situation with Mike Leach at Texas Tech and Craig James, and I think Brandon James was the kid that was the wide receiver that got locked in the shed, supposedly. I was not a fan of Craig James. I was not a fan of what went on at Texas Tech and how he had to exit, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But it is the lawsuit that makes you ask questions if you're Tennessee right now and the Tennessee fan base. Hey, do we need that in our direction where our head coach we're hiring is in a lawsuit with another Power 5 football team? Maybe that does scare him away. But I'm telling you right now, the list is getting shorter and shorter for Tennessee right now of coaches that are willing to take the job. And to me, if there's a proven winner and Mike Leach that is ready to open that door, I think you try to jump on it.
BJ Neville says, hell yes, hire Mike Leach. And listen, maybe BJ speaks for a lot of Tennessee fans when he says that. Maybe that's the case. Here's my theory, though. If Leach wasn't a fun guy, and I won't deny he's fun. I mean, we play his clips even on AT&T SEC Country Live, even though he's, a gazillion miles away in Pullman, Washington. If he wasn't fun, people wouldn't want to be hiring him. Because if he wasn't fun, if he wasn't sort of the quirky personality, all these other issues would be more in the forefront of the conversation here. I feel like ADs are looking past what the media is obsessed with. The media creates this narrative that Mike Leach is a good hire because they want to cover Leach. I mean, the media is so self-serving. The media has done such a disservice to Tennessee fans with the way they've covered the story. There's this self-serving idea of, Leach would give great quotes. He'd be interesting. He'd be more interesting than other SEC coaches. Let's push for this to happen. When there are some real legitimate reasons why Leach maybe shouldn't be hired, but nobody in the media is covering any of that stuff because the media wants to cover Leach.
Listen, can I completely disagree with you?
By all means.
To me, Mike Leach would be at the top of a lot of programs' list if he wasn't so weird. I think I kind of look from the other direction. Look, this guy's won everywhere he's been. How many 10-win seasons does this guy have to have before he's offered a job in the SEC or in the ACC, or somebody wants to bring him down to college football haven down here? This guy's strung together 10-win seasons everywhere he's been. And by the way, Texas Tech and Washington State aren't exactly football powers. He's corrected those programs. He's made some mistakes along the way. He's shown a lack of ability to win the big game. But I think if he got somewhere that could play with a physical style of defense like Tennessee, I think he'd be a home run hire. I think I'd love to listen to the guy day in and day out.
Isaac Berry asked a good question. He says, can the Vols afford to be that picky right now? And that's not hold on, but that's not a rhetorical question. I think he means that legitimately.
Yeah.
I don't think he means, hey, can they even afford to be picky? I think he means, hey, how picky can you be with December 20th looming, the first year of the early signing period? Tennessee's recruiting class right now is a train wreck. There's been total hemorrhaging there on that. Can you afford to be picky if you're Tennessee here?
You can't. And to me, when I talk about this, and anybody in Vol land that wants somebody other than Mike Leach, tell me who it is, because I don't know that you're going to hire another coach in such a short span of time that has such name recognition. I think Mike Leach has national brand name recognition where he can go in and recruit right away. Now, will he get the players he wants right off the bat here in the span of 2 weeks? I don't think so. But at least he gives you a shot to go into some of these households in Tennessee and Georgia and start to pick up some more players.
Let me remind you, that's Mike Johnson. My name is Brandon Adams. Welcome into our very special broadcast of AT&T SEC Country Live, as we're live tonight from the Hooters in downtown Atlanta. A great spot to enjoy the night before the big day tomorrow, the SEC Championship. And, of course, as always, AT&T is a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless and DirecTV. They'll help you stay connected all season long. We told you about being here at Hooters. Still time for you to get over here and say hello to us. If you're anywhere near the downtown Atlanta area, we'll be here for the next few minutes. We'd love to say thanks for watching AT&T SEC Country Live. And if you're looking for a way to kind of hang out, enjoy some football tomorrow, how about this great offer from Hooters? You can get $5 off your to-go order of $25 or more when you order online. You got to use the promo code SEC Fans. That's online to-go orders only. $5 off, $25 or more. SEC Fans is the promo code. Hooters.com is the website. Make sure you check that out. And, of course, it's really fun to be here, Hooters downtown Atlanta here this evening. Let me move on to item number 7 on our list as we get back to our SEC conversation here. And, you asked me a moment ago if you could sort of, what did you say, vehemently disagree, or do you totally disagree?
Yeah.
I want to say something that I feel like also you're going to likely be totally in total disagreement on based on how you've spoken before, but I feel very strongly about this. Jimbo Fisher to Texas A&M, the news that becomes official today, I think that's a huge pickup for the Aggies. I'm going to go so far as to say this. Next year, 2019, 2020, however far into the future you want to go, Alabama's still the team to beat in the SEC West, with all due apologies to Auburn, who won the league this year. They're still the team to beat, Alabama is. But the team that I believe is the biggest threat to Alabama right now in the West may be long-term Texas A&M. I'll even go so far as to say this. Jimbo's going to win the West at Texas A&M, and I wouldn't put it past him to win the whole league.
I wouldn't.
Before it's all said.
I'm not gonna disagree with that at all. I think that Jimbo Fisher is a talented enough coach, and there's enough talent and enough backing at Texas A&M to definitely do that. Now, am I ready to slide him past Auburn and Gus Malzahn with the resume they've put together this year? I'm not sure. Gus Malzahn's proven a lot of things to a lot of different people. I mean, he's in line for a huge pay raise. When you talk about the national landscape of coaches, Gus Malzahn has more favor right now than I think Jimbo Fisher does. Even with the ring in Jimbo Fisher's pocket, and Jimbo did beat Gus Malzahn in the national title game. I have to look at the names that have been there. I have to look at Alabama. I have to look at Auburn. LSU, for me, is always going to have that talent that Texas A&M is trying to get to. In the next 3 years, yeah, maybe 2020, 2019, I could see him making a run at it. I could see him getting a system put together. But I'm not ready to say that they're going to move past Auburn right now or LSU on the list of ranking teams in the SEC West.
Just remember this, though. There is a chance that Jarrett Stidham leaves after this year to go to the NFL draft. And if that be the case, you're left with Malik Willis. And Auburn fans will say, yeah, but we like Malik Willis.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is Malik Willis, as a prospect coming out of high school, was not on the same page as Jarrett Stidham, who was a consensus 5-star, top of everybody's list. Malik Willis, with all due respect, is just not that guy. What happens when Gus Malzahn doesn't have an elite quarterback? He got a really good year from Nick Marshall in 2013, won the SEC. As an OC in 2010, he had Cam Newton. Obviously, we know what the record books look like that year. They won the national championship. If it's no Jarrett Stidham next year, it probably feels more like the Gus Malzahn of 2014, 2015 than it does the Gus Malzahn of 2017, if you don't mind me saying so.
Listen, you're speaking my language. I've been talking, I said that all offseason. Here's what you have to watch out for Gus Malzahn. Tell me he's not looking at some of these junior colleges right now. I mean, Gus Malzahn. You know Gus Malzahn. Jarrett Stidham, Nick Marshall, Cam Newton, all these guys were transfers.
That's a good point.
And so, listen, I would not put it past Gus Malzahn to go out this offseason and try to find another one. Try to find another transfer quarterback if he doesn't believe Malik Willis is the guy.
On the flip side of that, think about how many quarterbacks Jimbo Fisher's developed over the years. E.J. Manuel, go back to the days at LSU. Jamarcus Russell. You can laugh about Jamarcus Russell in the NFL. Jimbo got him paid.
He was good in college.
Yeah, good in college. To say nothing of all. Jameis Winston was a Heisman Trophy winner. DeAndre Francois, who before the injury was having a very good year. Jimbo Fisher's going to get good quarterback play at Texas A&M. Now, I agree with what Cliff in the comment section said before. He's got to find a DC. But Jimbo Fisher's the start of something real. There aren't that many teams right now that can win an SEC championship. We may have fewer than ever before in terms of the teams it's a realistic possibility before. They have to move Texas A&M into that group.
Yeah, I understand that. And listen, you know me, you know my personality. I'm kind of a show-me type of guy when it comes to situations like this. I didn't believe in Jarrett Stidham before the year. He had some hiccups early on. I still wasn't really on board with Jarrett Stidham. Wasn't until I got to see a chance to see him square off against Georgia and Alabama until I was really on that hype train. Maybe that's what's going to take for me to really be on with Jimbo and Texas A&M. I think the sky is the limit, but they're going to have to prove it to me until I say that they're Alabama's biggest threat in the West.
Rodney Wooten says Jimbo is talented, but he's not passed up Auburn. You're going to be surprised with Chip Lindsey's use of Malik Willis. And I do have great respect for Chip Lindsey, an offensive coordinator, but a lot of this also depends on Auburn's ability to keep Lindsey as well. I mean, he's a name that's shown up on some of these head coaching search lists, too, for some of those sort of middle-tier type jobs.
Yeah, definitely. And listen, I think that when you do use Malik Willis, maybe you do go back to a Nick Marshall style of offense, but guess what? Auburn was very good at running that style. Nick Marshall wasn't exactly a polished passer, and somehow they found themselves, a couple of tricky wins there at the end of the schedule, but they did find themselves in a BCS title game. So I do err on the side of caution with Gus Malzahn right now. I've questioned him too many times probably this year as a head coach, and he has gotten it done time and time again and shown the rest of the world in the last few weeks that he's a really good coach.
Marshall Jones says, stop with the Jimbo worship. The only reason he and Florida State won is because Gus can't make the right decision. Obviously still angry about that national championship game after the 2013 season. I mean, I'm not going to apologize about this. I think this is a big hire for A&M here today, and we'll see how it plays out. We'll obviously be talking about a lot here on AT&T SEC Country Live. Live from the Hooters in downtown Atlanta on Peachtree Street. Let me do item number 8 here on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. We'll turn our attention back to the big game tomorrow. Speaking of Auburn, the team they play is Georgia. The quarterback for Georgia, Jake Fromm, the true freshman in the spotlight, trying to match what Jarrett Stidham's been giving Auburn all season long. Is he capable of doing that? Well, one of the guys who thinks he might be is the former Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Tim Tebow, who, part of the SEC Nation telecast emanating from Atlanta this week, says, listen, the thing about Jake Fromm is he's just a winner, referencing other coaches who've told him, he may not do anything particularly in a spectacular fashion, not a great runner necessarily, not the strongest arm, not the biggest guy, and Tebow's response is he's just a winner. Is that an accurate description for what you've seen from Jake Fromm, that the it factor, the moxie, to use all those cliches we use for quarterbacks, does that sort of overwhelm any other sort of description for you for Fromm?
I think that's probably the best description of him right now. You can't ask a ton of questions. The output has been there. If you're a Georgia fan, you're very happy with what Jake Fromm has brought to the table. I think you have to be careful, though. I think you have to be careful in not realizing at Georgia right now what's your bread and butter. I think if you're looking at that and you say, oh, yeah, Jake Fromm, all SEC candidate coming up, he's going to move into his sophomore year, he's going to be kind of the go-to guy. I don't know if, in my opinion, he's shown me enough to really put him on those preseason all-SEC teams just yet. The bread and butter right now is the front seven and the running game. Jake Fromm right now is a winner because of those two other things. He's a winner because of the running game and because of the front seven on defense and what Kirby Smart has been able to mold into this team. I have questions about some of the quarterbacks that I played with. I have questions about some of the other quarterbacks that have been in similar systems right now. Jake Fromm, very good player. But I just, when I look towards projecting, can he carry a football team is my biggest question when you call him a winner.
I think that's an interesting point to bring up. And I think that Fromm's had a really good season. I think the numbers to a certain extent speak for themselves. And yet I will add to that I do think there's a heavy load that he carries on his shoulder tomorrow, because clearly Georgia, what it tried against Auburn the first time around, did not work. The game plan was too conservative. The Georgia running game really got stymied by an Auburn defensive front that's pretty terrific. I do think that puts pressure on Fromm tomorrow to match what Stidham brings to the table, because my guess is that Stidham is going to have a pretty big day throwing the football, and that Georgia, to a certain degree, is going to have to match that. If Tebow is right that Fromm is just a winner, and to a certain extent I believe that probably is true, tomorrow's the kind of day where that's going to be need to be shown. I know what some people would say in response, oh, come on, he's only a true freshman quarterback, and that's true. He'll be better 2 or 3 years from now than he is right now, but there's no guarantee that his team will be in this spot the way that it is right now. This is a game away from a college football playoff spot. I can't imagine getting any sleep tonight if I was Jake Fromm. But the truth is, he wakes up tomorrow in some form or fashion with a lot of responsibility for how Georgia gets past Auburn into a shot at a national championship.
Yeah, and there's 2 ways for that to go for me. And listen, I saw this exact scenario play out when I was a senior in Alabama. And you guys know my background. My senior year was 2009. Guess what that matchup was, a quarterback matchup? You had a very, very similar matchup where you had a guy like Greg McElroy, who was known for handing the ball off to Mark Ingram, the Heisman Trophy winner, had a great defense in Alabama. He's going up against Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow, the all-everything, the all-American quarterback, outplayed Tim Tebow that day. He was the SEC championship game MVP. That's what Greg McElroy was in 2009. He exploded on the scene. You expected a running team to come out. You expected us in Alabama to try to smash the ball down their throat. They come out in 3 wide. All of a sudden, Greg McElroy's throwing the ball over the field. I can't remember what his numbers were, but he had like 250 passing yards that day. That's what you got to see from Jake Fromm tomorrow. You have to come out and be able to kind of shoulder that load. I agree with you. He's going to have to show up tomorrow. He probably won't sleep tonight. I think he can get it done. We're going to have to watch it play out on the field.
The frustrating thing here is, from a Georgia perspective, is Auburn doesn't blitz very much. They're always dropping guys back into coverage, and you can go back and look at some of those overhead shots and those third and longs that Georgia faced the first time around. I mean, I dare you to find an open receiver. I dare you to find an open receiver on some of those Holland sacks, because Auburn's just backing up in coverage, and they got a safety high. I mean, it's just hard to find anybody to throw the football to. That's the issue for Fromm tomorrow as well. Can he get enough protection from his offensive line, and can one of these Georgia receivers create some separation and make the throw a little easier for Fromm to make?
Yeah, and that's on Jim Chaney as well. That's on Jim Chaney to try to find those matchups, because guess what? You already have the game film. I mean, it's 3 weeks old. You can go back there and see what matchups you had at receiver. You can motion guys. You can look for zone. You can look for man coverage. You can bring some of those receivers behind the line of scrimmage. You can stack receivers to try to get those separations. That's what I think that I'm going to look for from Jim Chaney tomorrow. Does he come out with some of those bunch sets? Does he stack guys to try to get keep them from getting jammed and held off the line of scrimmage the way Kirby Smart was so mad about a few weeks ago? That's up to Jim Chaney. That's up to the wide receiver corps. That's why I hesitate putting everything on Jake Fromm right now, because I think he can only go as far tomorrow as the rest of his team takes him.
Henry Riddle in the comments section says Auburn wins big again tomorrow. Have you heard people this week that are saying it is going to be a carbon copy of the first time in November? You're hearing some people also calling for the big Auburn win again.
Yeah, I have definitely heard a lot of people call. The only thing I haven't heard is people think that Georgia's going to win big. And
Georgia win easy,
that's because the result you saw from a couple of weeks ago. I think the neutral field definitely brings it back towards 0. When you talk about a 23-point victory for Auburn a couple of weeks ago, 23 to me is a huge number. I think that Georgia obviously bringing it back to the pack playing in Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Let me hit a couple more of these comments. Flint Nichols in the comment section says Auburn will have a tougher time winning tomorrow. Kerryon Johnson's not the end all for Auburn. They have younger players and can stand up. They will get the win, though. Michael Bowling says Auburn doesn't have to blitz. The front four can make Fromm pay. Watch the tape. Yeah, when we were talking about this just a moment ago. When you go back and look at that tape from that first time around, I haven't seen the whole game film, but I saw plenty of those highlights. And he's right in the comment section. That coverage drops back. Holland's good enough to get the quarterback on his own. That's just a tough defensive issue for Georgia to deal with tomorrow. Kevin Steele. He's had a great season as a coordinator. But you're not having to be too creative when you got the beasts like Holland and those guys.
Well, and that's why I feel comfortable saying this game's going to be a lot tighter. What is the get-off like for Jeff Cullen on a neutral field? What is the get-off like for non-factor? A lot of the game against Clemson, some of the game against LSU, you didn't hear Jeff Holland's name a lot. That's because you're on the road, you're dealing with the away crowd noise, not really having that crowd on your side where you can time up that silent count from the opposing offense. I don't think that's going to be as big of a thing for Jeff Holland tomorrow. That's why I want to see how his get-off and the rest of that defensive line, what's their get-off like? Do they have to start blitzing in the second half to stop the Georgia run game?
Item number 9 on our AT&T SEC Country Line 1st and 10. Unless someone mentioned to you before about the Alabama situation, let's talk about that here for a moment. Your rooting interest as an Alabama alumnus, and some advice here for the Crimson Tide fans who are trying to figure out everything they need to have happen to have their name called on Sunday. Tell me some of your ideas here. Do you need Auburn to beat Georgia, first of all?
I don't think that it hinges on Auburn and Georgia. Obviously, it would be a strike in the right direction right now, but I think there's other points that you look to that are a lot bigger deal. Yeah. I think first of all, you can't have you can't have the top 4 win out. That it's not going to matter then if Auburn beats Georgia because then you won't be able to find a way in. The first game I'm looking at, I think it's a slam dunk if TCU wins. Yeah, I think it's a slam dunk. Alabama slides into the top 4. I think TCU wins. That Oklahoma. TCU is always back at 11 right now. To think that a Big 12 champion jumps from 11 all the way into the top 4
seems hard to do.
It's not going to happen. Seems hard to do. I think that then you point your attention. If Oklahoma wins, I expect Oklahoma to win tomorrow. I think that at that point, then you all of a sudden you start watching that Ohio State game late Saturday night. If Ohio State can beat Wisconsin, then I think that gives you the second best chance. If both of those teams can win, I think Alabama slides right in. If TCU wins, Alabama slides right in. Ohio State's the one to me that'll be a coin toss in the eyes of the committee. But that to me are my rooting interests. I want to see TCU and I want to see Ohio State.
So Bama fans, you ready to root for Ohio State? You don't like Urban Meyer. You don't like Ohio State. Dating back to 2014, you ready to root for Ohio State on Saturday? You got to hold your nose and do it. Is that the way it goes?
Listen, Urban Meyer for me dates back a lot farther than 2014. A lot of people in the state of Alabama swallowing a lot of pride tomorrow be cheering for Ohio State.
Yeah, that's a really interesting scenario here, and I will admit it's strange to have a championship Saturday not involving Alabama. We haven't done this. Yeah. You have to go back to 2013 season to find a first Saturday in December where Alabama's sitting at home and watching. There is something that's just a little bit weird about that.
It is, and I'm doing my best to try to enjoy it, BA. I'm like, you know what, I don't have to be stressed this weekend, but I'm creating stress by watching these TCU and Ohio State games. It is interesting. Alabama not only has been here for a lot of these SEC title games, for a lot of the openers. You've seen Alabama come in. You do get used to a guy that lived in Atlanta and went to Alabama as seeing Alabama fans around here, but I think it kind of, honestly, to me, it takes a little bit of slack off knowing it's such a great matchup tomorrow.
We'll have our championship game predictions here coming up in just a moment. For now, though, let me remind you that AT&T is a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless DirecTV. They'll help you stay connected all season long. Also, it's been great tonight to be with you from the Hooters in downtown Atlanta on Peachtree Street. What a fun time this is. Great crowd as everybody's getting ready for the SEC championship game on Saturday. And, of course, if you're getting ready to watch a lot of football tomorrow and you're going to be doing it from the comfort of your own home, well, Hooters has got a great offer for you. You can get $5 off your order of $25 or more when you order to go online. Hooters.com is the website. Make sure you use the promo code SECFans to get $5 off your order of $25 or more when you order to go online. Check out Hooters.com for more on that. All right, item number 10, the moment has arrived. Let's make our picks. I'll go first to give you a chance to back clean up here. For me, I'm gonna replicate what I said the first time around. I think this is a Georgia win. I was wrong the first time. Maybe I'll be right this time. I think what it requires, though, is a low-scoring game. I think Georgia needs a game where the winner's not in the 30s, right? I mean, maybe you can get into the 20s here, but if this game gets to be in the 30s for either side, I think that starts to feel a little bit more like an Auburn type of game. If Georgia can find a way to keep it low scoring, then at that point in time, the healthier stable of running backs works to Georgia's advantage. Georgia can go Nick Chubb, it can go Sonny Michel, it can go DeAndre Swift. If Elijah Holyfield played for Auburn, he'd be starting on Saturday. I mean, Georgia's got at least 4 running backs, better than what Auburn might be bringing to the table. If Georgia can keep it a low scoring game, all of that matters a lot more. That's what I think is going to happen. I'm going to take Georgia to the tune of somewhere near 24-17, 24-20. That's about what I'm seeing there. Maybe the lowest scoring game of the day tomorrow, at least from the major Power 5 conference titles.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting game. I agree with you. I think it has to be a low-scoring game if Georgia's going to be in this. I think that if it starts to get into a shooting match and then all of a sudden Auburn pulls out into the lead, and right now when you look at who is built for games like that, if Georgia has to start throwing the ball later in the game and unleashing that defensive line, neutral side or not, unleashing that defensive line, I think it becomes an issue for Georgia. I flip-flop on this game all week. I said after the Iron Bowl last week I wasn't going to question Gus Malzahn anymore. As we got into the middle of the week, I thought, man, you know what? Georgia's really got a lot of things going. It's hard to match up twice in a row and do the same things you did. But I got to tell you, B.A., I'm tired of questioning Gus Malzahn at Auburn right now. I look at what they have. Stidham right now is as close to like the NBA Jam on fire as you can find right now in college football. And as much as it pains me to do that, I think Auburn's going to win the game tomorrow. I look at it right in the neighborhood of 31-24. I'm with you. At the 30-point plateau, I'm not sure Georgia matches up that well trying to get to 30 points. 31-24 final score for me tomorrow. Auburn wins the game.
We shall see how that plays out. Let's do our AT&T look ahead here and look at how Georgia fits into the rest of the games this weekend. Really in just a few minutes here, 15 minutes from right now, as we're wrapping up here on the AT&T SEC Country Live broadcast from Hooters in downtown Atlanta. Pac-12 championship game begins. Yep. I think this is a great game. I think Stanford-USC is actually a lot of fun here tonight. The Stanford win against Notre Dame, the USC win against UCLA sort of adds to the prestige of this Pac-12 title game tonight.
I have to agree with you. I think that when you look at how these teams have fared in recent years, USC is such a household name. Stanford has gotten there here recently. I think these two teams matching back up, I think it becomes increasingly exciting. I think that USC, in my opinion, USC being on the outside looking in right now, the Final Four, is a little bit of a shame. I think that they've had some good wins this year. When you look at their losses, they've been pretty quality as well.
I think we get two blowouts tomorrow. I think Ohio State actually blows out Wisconsin, and I think Clemson blows out Miami. And when I say blowout, let me be clear here.
Right.
I think both those games are decided by more than a 2-touchdown margin.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked at all. I think when you look at the odds that one of those two things will happen, Ohio State has so much firepower offensively right now. Their defense is playing at a high level. Can Wisconsin's defensive speed match up with Ohio State? That's going to be the big question mark for me. I think Ohio State wins the game, but I'm looking at about a 10-point margin of victory.
And then the game that's actually the precursor to the SEC championship, the Big 12 title game. I know I'm a goofball for saying this, and y'all can make fun of me on Monday, but something strange has got to happen. I say watch out for TCU on Saturday for no other reason than you can't have big football games over the course of tonight and tomorrow without having something weird happen in one of them. Just watch out for TCU. That's all I'm saying. Watch out for the Horned Frogs.
You're going to say you can't take chalk on Championship Saturday, and I completely agree with you. I just look at a different game. Miami and Clemson, to me, very scary game for Clemson. I think Mark Richt has a knack for in these big championship level games. I think back to Georgia 2012, being able to coach these teams up to a different level when everything is on the line. Mark Richt, for me, runs into problems when there's not anything on the line. A game, like last week against Pitt, and these big games, I'm telling you right now, I'd be watching out right now if I'm Clemson.
All right, let's get ready to close out the show the way we do each and every day here on AT&T SEC Country Live. And as I do, I'll say thanks to everyone here who's made this such a great home for us here at Hooters in downtown Atlanta. But much like the former Tennessee coach Butch Jones was always looking for champions of life, well, we're looking for him here on AT&T SEC Country Live as well. And one of the things we've referenced a lot here on our program over the last few weeks is how that rock, that famous rock right there in Knoxville, Tennessee, has been kind of painted to reflect the state of affairs, the Vols, a lot of dissatisfaction. Another example of that here today, as the rock was painted, the Tennessee Browns, sort of a reference to Jimmy Haslam's connection to the Browns. Obviously, there's a reference to Lane Kiffin there as well. But that's an example of how frustrated the Vols fans have been, saying our team's just as much of a disaster as the Browns have been in the NFL. Maybe the Fulmer hire makes them feel a little bit better.
I mean, this rock has become like the billboard for Tennessee football. It's like, where's everybody getting all this paint? I mean, the Sherwin-Williams up in Knoxville's got to be about to go out of business. They're going to have to close their doors. They're selling so much paint. Who has the time? Like, when did they do this? Is there not anybody filming them, like painting this rock? It's changing every 3 hours.
That is a good question. You see the thing changing all the time, but it's not like an LED board.
Yeah, like it changes. Every 2 hours we see a different message.
You've also seen some misspellings this week. That's actually one of the better ones compared to some of the stuff that's gone on. Hey, thanks so much for being here. Thank you all for watching us each and every day. Thanks for making this. This is actually our 1-year anniversary of doing the show, so thanks for making it a great year for us. Enjoy the games tomorrow. We'll be back at Monday, 3 p.m. for our regular time and a regular week with a whole lot to talk about. Either Georgia or Auburn going to be very happy. New coaches being hired. We'll tell you all about it then. Let's say goodbye for now, though, from the Hooters in downtown Atlanta. Appreciate you being with us. Enjoy the football. We'll talk to you again soon.